Thanks everyone for joining us. Now here is Barrett Pittner from SEL and my co-curator Seda from SAMASAMA.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today. If this is your second or third day joining in, we are so grateful you decided to come back. If it is your first time, you have the past two sessions also recorded, so you can tune in and follow along. Thank you so much. This is our last day of the Altars Festival, and I'll give you a little bit of an introduction. Like Les says, I am the other half currently of SAMASAMA. Originally started off as just an annual exhibition that has now grown into sort of cultivating conversations of the diaspora community. And this Altars Festival, we partnered up with the Sustainable Culture Lab. And I will let Barrett speak a little bit more on that. But with the Altars Festival, we have curated some artists and speakers to speak a little bit about the traditions of altars, but as well as sort of the representation and symbolism of what altars kind of really means. And the first day we did spend some time to create space about paying honor to our ancestors and our heritage. And then yesterday, we kind of spent some time to discuss sort of that third cultural intersectionality of traditions, as well as what it means in our everyday to-day life. And yesterday was really special. So if any of you were able to join yesterday, it was just such a meaningful, thoughtful experience. I mean, all of the conversations that we've had since day one and what the artists have shared with us has been just a space for just reflecting, whether it means kind of taking to the time to learn about where we come from, but really just kind of where we're going and what do these mean, what do these practices and what our ancestry means to us and who we are today. So it kind of rolls into the future, really, and what we wanted to do with our third day here. And that is why the theme of today is that our essence and existence is political, trauma, healing, and action through community. And we're really excited because I'm tired of hearing myself talk a little bit. And so we have a special person who's also going to help us open up this conversation and help set the tone for the rest of the programming today, which is Sheldon, Scott, culture director of Eaton. But I'll let Barrett speak a little bit and kind of get going. So thank you again. And please, if anybody has any comments, any questions, feel free to throw it into the chat. And we will try our best to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to kind of have their input.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Seda. Excuse me. So the work of the Sustainable Culture Lab, we are very philosophical and linguistic, and we focus on this word ethnocide quite a bit, which is the destruction of culture while keeping the people. And but we don't want to just focus on this word that we think really helps describe American society, because if you look at the transatlantic slave trade, the goal of that was to get African people, destroy their culture, but keep the people, so there could be a exploitative, oppressive norm that you could build your society around. But in addition to like pointing that out and being able to shape the conversation in the US about how we talk about inequality and exploitation and race, we want to create structures that allow people to create culture. Because if you live in a place that normalizes the destruction of culture, you now have to come up with innovative solutions to create culture and bring people together. And so the Altars Project is one of those initiatives that we've been working on. And a key thing for creating culture is it can't be something that just appeals to your head or your language. It has to get you in the heart, and that's where artists come in quite a bit. And so we've been really pleased to be able to partner with SAMASAMA so that we can get these new artists who can get these complex philosophical ideas that we work on and express them in a way that's really emotive and attaching, gets people, and we can start creating these cultural structures that can sustain people in a healthy fashion. And ancestor remembrance traditions are a key component of that. You can look at societies all throughout the world, and they have had robust ancestor remembrance practices that keep their culture alive, keep the spirit of the people alive. allows them to collectively cope with trauma and grief and loss while strengthening their community. And the US doesn't have something at scale that we all do to do this practice. And so the Altars Festival and the Altars Project is about cultivating that space. And to do that, we need philosophers, artists, but also activists, because our existence, our essence in America is political if you are a person of color, because our society was largely created to make sure that we didn't have any political influence. So just exercising your existence and your identity becomes a form of activism, becomes political. And so making sure that we're aware of that, I think is really quite important. And coincidentally, the timing of Day of the Dead becomes a perfect opportunity to showcase all of the facets of this practice, because it happens right before a national election. So while we're remembering our ancestors like we did on day one, while we're talking about the complexity of the mixing of culture for immigrant communities in America to make something new that we did in day two, now in day three, we're talking about how all of this manifests in a way that whether we like it or not is inherently political in the US, and to keep all of that in mind. And so that's the focus of these events and this festival, these 3 days. And it's been a really fruitful conversation. It's been very emotional and thoughtful and considerate. And we're really glad to also bring Sheldon into the mix, because he is, he's just a cultural expert in DC, and he always has something insightful to say. So we're glad that the conversation can expand beyond just me and Seda chatting each and every day, and bring some new voices into the mix. So I'll kick it to Sheldon. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. Thank you for your very thoughtful programming. It's, like Seda mentioned, I'm the director of culture here at Eaton, but also an artist, and come from a particular culture in the United States that is definitely more an example of survival, and that has been able to create itself and sustain itself despite of colonialist structure. I am Gullah Geechee. I was born and raised in the Sea Barrier Islands in South Carolina. I come from Pawleys Island in particular. And culturally, we were robbed of the historic ancestral culture that is connected to the continent, and we had to, in a lot of ways, that a lot of communities and cultures do, actually had to rebuild a culture and create a culture out of nothing. And it's very interesting, to hear now that there's so much attention and interest in the Gullah Geechee people, our language, our cultural practices, because I remember quite distinctly, growing up in South Carolina, and like people are ostracizing us because of the way that we speak. I tell people that, I spent most of my life thinking that I was language deficient. And it wasn't until I was in my early teens and got introduced to Creole culture in New Orleans that I realized that, I actually wasn't language deficient. I actually was bilingual. And that just wasn't the construct of, the understanding of our culture. It wasn't just the approach to it. It was always thought of something that was lesser than. And I think the story there, the thing that we walk away with every time is like, no matter what kind of structures, oppressive structures are put on cultures, there's always a thriving to create a new culture, to hold on to something, to create new ways to connect to the ancestral, because any descendant of African slave in the United States has a real hard time doing that, because all of those things were decimated, not just culturally but also physically. Like you had no connections to, sometimes like your own generation. Like families were ripped apart, you know, both from Africa and here in the United States. So but despite all of that, we were able to build that commonality. We were able to tap into that human culture, that likeness, and that empathy that drives us to where we are right now, constantly in the space of creating new cultures. So thank you all for doing this, and thanks for having me. And looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of carry it on too, just like you said, the lack of tradition and kind of having to seek out potentially existing ones and just sort of like reintroducing yourself and your family to that connection of these traditions is this, that's the whole purpose of what we wanted to kind of put out there with the Altars Festival, where it kind of evolved from Barrett, creating this Altars documentary for almost a personal project, right? Of finding a way to seek out a way of healing and a way to process death and life, and then how it's kind of evolved into connecting with already existing traditions. And I think we wanted to inspire anybody that don't feel connected to an already existing practice to say, hey, like, you can create this, because if America's not going to formalize one for you, we want to give you the sense of agency to and empowerment to kind of create that and bring that into your life, and how significant that is into how that potentially rolls over into our respect and value for human life in America today. So I really appreciated you saying and sharing a little bit about your own journey of that.
And just to add on a bit of what Sheldon just mentioned is, like, I'm also Gullah Geechee, but I grew up in the suburbs of Marietta, Georgia. I mean, the suburbs of Atlanta, Marietta, Georgia. And so, like, my connection to my Gullah Geechee roots are just through my mom. And there wasn't the cultural fabric around me. And I remember as a kid, she would always want to make this dish on New Year's Eve called Hoppin' John. And I never wanted to eat it because I didn't like rice. I was just like, rice is just, I liked, for some reason as a kid, I just loved noodles. I thought noodles were the best.
Get out of here. Close this window. Who's the administrator? He doesn't like rice. What?
He liked one of the carbs. We'll give it to him. He liked one of the carbs.
It's one of those things when you're a kid, your taste buds are weird. Like, as an adult, I eat rice like all the time now, and Hoppin' John's a thing I have no problem with. But I remember my mom looking at me as a kid, just saying, like, whose kid are you? Like, what is, like, this is our cultural dish, and you're just telling me you don't like rice? Like, our people have survived off of rice for generations, and you're over here in the suburbs of Atlanta just saying, no, I'm not going to eat that. And I think about that a lot, because if I was surrounded by family, like there were Gullah people, and I said, I'm not going to eat rice, there would have been like 3, 4, 5, 6 people that would just told me that I was crazy and I didn't have an option, and I was just going to have to eat rice. And I would eat Hoppin' John every day. But it became like a little tit for tat battle between my mom and myself. Like, no, I don't like it. And my dad's like, I'm from Alabama. This is your mom's thing. And so I think about that stuff quite a bit, because as I got older, my uncle, he realized that like his grandparents were passing away, and he needed to like start doing research. So then he started doing a lot of research on our family history, and it gave me a gateway to acquaint myself with our Gullah past, and the fact that Charleston had such a vibrant community of free persons of color, that there were, we were able to find ancestors that were documented and living in Charleston in the early 1800s. And like realizing that's just something that a lot of African Americans aren't going to be able to do. And I very well might not have gotten that information if I didn't have this one uncle that wanted to look at it. I would have just been a suburban kid from, you know, Marietta saying, I don't want to eat rice, put this cultural dish away. And I wouldn't have been malicious or having any sort of negative intent, but I would have just casually lost that without thinking about it. So these altars and this project in many ways is like making myself aware that there's actually a effort that I have to put in just due to like moving and not being in the same space, that I have to like cultivate these practices and figure it out. And so it's really funny when I bumped into Sheldon at Eaton, I was like, he's Gullah? Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. Like another person from the area, even though I'm a bit more of a poser because I'm from Marietta and didn't grow up in the spot. You know, he's more entrenched in it than I am. But it's like, wow, you know, that cultural connection is a real thing. And so I'm just really pleased that Sheldon's here because I get to have these Gullah conversations about stuff that I don't normally get to have.
Well, you brought up two important things. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, like, it's so awesome that you both were able to connect to that. And if you had any suggestions to anybody that wanted to kind of seek out just the root and of the ancestry of their heritage line.
Yeah, I was, Barrett brought up two very salient points. One was about food and food culture and food ways. I think next to the oral tradition, like food ways are the kind of, the next biggest conduit or protector or custodian of like cultures. Like, it's a big part of a lot of diasporic communities, is the way that they connect to the ancestral is like oftentimes through food. Because you think about like the rice in of itself, like you would have that conversation, if you say you were like, I don't like rice, you would probably get that same response, not just here, but like you would get that same response probably in some places on the continent. Like jollof is a very big culture and tradition on the continent, and every region has its own particular dialect within that larger conversation. And that's all like Hoppin' Johns and chicken bog and to some extent gumbo, like that all is that same thing, that same family. So, it's just a way that we keep a hold of like those things past. And then the other thing that you mentioned is the fact that, you didn't grow up on the islands, which is, which is very rare. There's not a lot of people that are growing up on the island, and growing up on the island right now, the series of islands becoming greater and greater danger because like now people are realizing the value and the sheer beauty of these barrier islands. And like, we all know that in hyper-capitalist structure, poor people don't get to enjoy beautiful things. So like, there's a huge like kind of siege on those lands down there, but that should not, dictate like your ability to embrace, hold, and, honor that culture like 100% just because you didn't grow up there. Because, even though the land is incredibly important, if we relied on the land exclusively as a way of like determining our cultural connections to it and our ancestral connections to it, we'll be fucked. And that's just the way that we are right now. And that's just the way that we're moving, as a country. So we have to find, other ways to continue those conversations and maintain those identities as the land unfortunately slips away from us over time. So, it's, like I said, it's good to have these conversations, and it's, it's good to really talk about these things and, put things in context. Like, there hasn't been a lot of preservation efforts around Gullah Geechee historically. Like the Gullah Geechee Preservation Society was just founded in 2006, and they established a corridor. Like you got Sunim Cho, who the first person that we know to have ever teach a Gullah language class. He's up at Harvard. Like all of these efforts now are fairly recent, and we just have to continue to like express how important it is and lean into that culturally, and just allow people to understand and embrace that identity, because it is any diasporic cultures, like be it African or Asian, like we realize that we've been kind of I don't know, like corralled around colonialism. And sometimes when we come into these corrals, we have distinct languages and practices that are from a very large region. People love to talk about Asia and Africa as single identities. And it's really hard for us to continue to put that conversation. Like you are talking about a vast amount of land, more than you could ever understand in the United States. And within those vast lands comes so many different identities and communities that emerge from them. So it's just important for us to continue to frame these conversations. And I think the big part of that is connecting to the ancestral, because it becomes the hub, it becomes the base, it becomes the common space that we can all occupy. And then we should be able to occupy that without any predispositions or prejudice around how far down the diaspora we may be, because that's a big trap, I think, for us a lot of times. I think that because we're so quote unquote removed physically, we find ourselves removing ourselves or disconnecting from those cultures in other ways that are way more meaningful and important.
Yeah, no, well, that's a perfect way to wrap it up. I'll add one more thing before we kick it to the next artist. But my mom she's the Gullah Geechee. She's from Charleston. And so her accent, she has the cadence. So everyone thinks my mom is from the Caribbean. And so this is one of the reasons why growing up in the South, I have no Southern accent, because despite my dad being from Alabama, he doesn't have an accent. And my mom sounds like someone that everyone thinks is from the island. So I'm just a kid that grew up around like non-Southern accents all the time. And so the fact that I am never sounded like anybody around me has like shaped how I interact with my environment, because I always sounded like a foreigner despite being from Marietta. And it's because my mom sounds like she's from the Caribbean. And then as a result, a lot of her friends are all people from the islands, who people are like, you're one of them. And she's like, I'm from Charleston. They all think she's from Jamaica. And so it's really unique how it shapes who you are in these really peculiar ways that you, like, years later you look back and you go, that's why I was different, because I sounded different. And this is why I didn't eat rice, because there was only one person in my house that said that you should eat rice. And I had to learn the benefit of eating rice as I got older, And so it's just kind of cool. But I'll kick it to Seda, and we'll keep the program going.
I love where this conversation is already kind of just unraveled, because just like Sheldon said, it's just really important that we all take the time and hold ourselves accountable to this conversation as as who we are as people, that it doesn't always have to stem from this American white space or this colonized white space. Like, we are just as responsible for seeking out our own answers and that's why what Sheldon said is, like, let's take it back to our ancestry, right? And that can kind of grow and stem from there. But let's go to our next speaker, artist talk, in which we'll actually be able to kind of see a little bit of what an altar looks like from a specific perspective of Shyama Kuver. Her practice is inspired by her queer and Indo-Fijian identities, a deep love for speculative fiction, and growing up in a pre-tech San Francisco. From a young age, art was a place for exploration in her search of belonging. Without a solid national, racial, or ethnic identity, and a complicated misunderstanding of motherland monoliths, her artistic style speaks to the multicultural, spiritual, and experiential contexts that have shaped her life and career. Always excited to see. Go for it, Shyama.
All right, hi everyone. So great to be with you all today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can unveil my altar for you. All right, so not quite yet. So again, hi everyone, my name is Shyama Kuver. My pronouns are she, her, herself. I'm a figurative surrealist living here in Washington, D.C., which was the Piscataway people were the stewards of this land, and by way of San Francisco, California, which was Ohlone territory. My art practice is mostly rooted in painting and illustration, but it is multidisciplinary in exercise because I'm a self and community taught artist, and I'm indebted to other artists and art lovers because they've given me so much. And so I just want to start off by specifically saying thank you to the SAMASAMA community that has brought me here today alongside Sustainable Culture Labs. The altar I created for the Altars Project is a memorial for my Appa, Shyama Kuver. He was my greatest champion since day one, and he is such a beautiful light and continues to be one that leaves behind a legacy of integrity, spiritual alignment, and being a general badass nonconformist and not being afraid to be that person. On this page, you see cutlasses and some vibrant colors. The cutlass or machete is used in sugarcane fields across the global south. My ancestors were brought from various parts of South Asia to Fiji, and this created a new trajectory in our shared stories. And I'll go back into indenture a little bit later. But I also like to use the image of moons and suns as focal points in my work, because one day while my dad was on the phone with me, I was living in Ithaca, New York at the time, and he was in Sacramento, California. And I said to him, I wish you could see this sun. It's so bright and fiery orange, and it just looked so huge in the sky. And he said to me, don't worry, I see it. Same sun, different sky. And this is a pattern you'll see recognized in my work oftentimes. And the statement, same sun, different sky, has come to mean so much to me, especially after him passing. The way I see myself as rooted in global community is also rooted in this statement, and how I feel connected to those who are different from myself and also so similar. And this piece is dedicated to my dad. It is also a reflection of the loss and the circumstances that surround a lot of the losses that we all face. And I feel like Barrett, Sheldon, and Seda really touched on that in opening this conversation. The losses that surround all of us, and it's one that is difficult to make sense of and is often perpetrated by unseen hands and state identities and entities. So when Almas Haider, another brilliant artist in this series, told me about the project, I was immediately drawn to the concept. Housing an altar is very important to me. Since I was a child, we had an altar where we would do weekly rituals, recitations, and prayers. The image here demonstrates some of the items we would have at our altar. We would use incense and a fire made from cotton balls and key and water and red thread to support us in our alignment with our spiritual practice. My parents believed that altars did not have to be very complicated. All you really needed was fire and water and incense, but even those were extra. What you really needed to bring was your intentions and a deep respect and love for your ancestors and deities. I think at this foundation, there was also trust, which I think is true for most spiritual practices. It's a trust in the unknown and a trust that it'll get you through. This project challenged and allowed me to think past the concept of an altar in literal terms, while also staying true to myself and what an altar looks like or what it needs to look like. So here's my altar. So it is mixed media, mostly comprising of clay and brass. My altar is a reflection of me. I was born and raised in California, where I was influenced heavily by Latinx, Black, and Indigenous cultures, and also my own Indo-Fijian culture and spirituality, which is its own mix, being rooted in Fiji. When Sheldon and Barrett talked about Gullah culture, it feels so similar to being Indo-Fijian and wanting to feel like you're reflected in larger communities, even when you're a part of such a small one. Culture isn't static though, and so, meaning it is alive, it's breathing, it's a moving, dancing thing. And just because it changes doesn't mean it is destroyed. And I'm bringing my culture, a mixture of ancestral knowledge, the beliefs I've developed over time through my own experiences, but also the critiques of my culture, because patriarchy, colorism, Islamophobia, and homophobia are all parts of Hindu culture that I do not agree with and will forever be down about that. So these are the aesthetics that speak to me and are also helping me shape the future and art I want to create. The foundation of this piece is a table that was purchased. It's brass and has cow or goat legs. And here I'm using it as a play on the things we find holy in institutionalized and organized religion, in contrast to human life and its vibrancy, complexities, and liveliness. Right now in South Asia, Islamophobia is such a painful oppression that is created through Hinduism and right-wing Hindus. And so as a Hindu, it's really important for me to think about that and to think about how I can combat that. I use clay as a symbol for grounding and weight, but also as a symbol for heaviness or grief and responsibility to search for and create equity. So I created a 108 bead mala that is exaggerated in size, and the weight symbolizes the gravity of being able to ritualize your pain and remembrance, and how sometimes weight can be a burden or a symbol for being overwhelmed. And sometimes it's a symbol for depth and demonstrates just how meaningful something is. Using clay, I also created a conch shell, a symbol of auspiciousness, and incense sticks. And incense sticks help us think about connecting to other, or connecting across veils, and purify us in body and spirit. I painted everything with really vibrant colors, while the mala and conch shells I use every day are simple. Tan sandalwood with faded orange thread. I wanted to symbolize the vibrancy that we bring to our own practice. Our practice is us. Our spiritual paths are electricity and we are a conduit, and vice versa. This was an opportunity to create something that recognized the way we build while we are oppressed, microaggressed at best, murdered at worst. We continue to build worlds. I grew up in a mixed caste Hindu household. We also have a familial history of displacement through indenture. And indenture is what was enacted after the transatlantic slave trade was abolished. So my ancestors on both sides of my lineage were brought to Fiji to work the sugarcane fields and other hard labor. When my dad immigrated to the US in 1963, he was almost immediately drafted into the Vietnam War. His experiences in the war and the chemicals he was exposed to, like Agent Orange, directly impacted his health and led to the loss of his life. This process has challenged me to interrogate my grief in ways that I haven't in a long time. So when my dad passed away, my relationship to my ancestors and to God shifted immediately. I felt so betrayed, and it was a betrayal I didn't expect to feel. But I all of a sudden couldn't pray, and I couldn't even pick up pieces that were connected to my spiritual practice. Basically, I closed all of that stuff up in a cabinet. But slowly, over time, years, I rebuilt those relationships through letter writing, literally not being able to pray yet, but writing Dear Bhagwan, which is another term for God. So dear God, like Dear Santa. But slowly it became more real. Slowly it took time, but it stopped being Dear Santa and just started becoming intuitive and very organic. And now I see my father as an ancestor who I miss tremendously, but who is still very much part of my everyday life. my grief and the sense of loss has shifted so much, and I was able to reorient myself to the fact that my pain, my growth, my sense of loss, and the gratitude I feel have all come so far just by working on this altar. I've realized that things that maybe I thought were so salient are not as salient now, and they've shifted in the way that they look and the way that they feel, to the point where I'm not stuck in the loss that I have experienced, but I'm able to articulate the alignment between my practice and my emotions. So the most meaningful piece, I would say, to me in this piece is the portrait I created of my father. So my appa. So I created it from memory. When someone you love passes away, you worry that you'll forget their face, their voice, the stories you've shared. Sometimes I say my dad's full name into the night sky just to hear it out loud, because when someone passes away, it sometimes becomes rare to hear their name regularly. And so it's just such a beautiful practice in itself to say their name. And when I was working with Alyssa on our podcast, we made this direct connection to the Say Her Name movement and how meaningful that is, and how meaningful remembrance is to all of us, big and small. So again, this is true for mobilizations, ceremonies that our ancestors led or belonged to or engaged in. And it's up to us to keep these legacies and histories alive, because they won't be found in mainstream textbooks. They won't be found in anything that the West wants to provide. It will always, or for the foreseeable future, there will always be a resentment towards us wanting to center our voices, our stories, and our ancestors. So it's up to us to keep these legacies and histories alive. And what they stood for is immensely meaningful. One of the most terrifying things we can do is forget, or to not see the depth and meaning in these people and moments, even if they're nameless and faceless. They were and they are because we are. So this is my dad. I just want to take a moment to remember him, Shyama Kuver. He was born in Lautoka, Fiji Islands, and he immigrated to San Francisco in 1963. He was a Vietnam veteran, and he was such a beautiful soul who did not believe in war. He was an activist, and he was a brilliant girl dad. Let me just say, he was like all about feminism. So I'm very thankful that I had a dad who was just so generous and witty and playful. So finally, it is up to us to shine a light on the unseen hands of power, empire, incarceration, and capitalism. It is up to us to see one another and to be seen. Thank you so much for your time, and especially as we prepare to go through more unknowns, I hope that you and yours are safe and held.
Thank you so much, Shyama. That was beautiful. Every time in the last couple of days that we've had someone really connected to someone personal to them, I'm like, oh man, it just makes me feel really grateful for that, for us sharing the space and creating the time for us to do this. I mean, there's such bigger conversations that we really wanted to kind of put out there by doing this festival and you know, having everybody participate and provide their input. And it really has been grounding and humbling to kind of just connect to the root of it all, because people are really connecting it to family members. So thank you. I really did kind of get a cute, sweet smile from the girl dad when I saw you put that up there. It was really sweet.
Yeah, no, I just want to add to, just continue with what Seda said. It's, with each artist, I see their altar, and for like the first second, I always think, I'm not sure what it means. because all of them look so different. And one of the questions that we always had regarding this project was, how could we do this without appropriating someone else's culture? Since it's happening around on Dia de los Muertos, like, how can we do it without appropriating Mexican culture? My response was always, well, you just have to have an authentic expression of your culture and your experience. And then there's no way that you're appropriating somebody else's. You just have to express your culture. And it's easy for me to say that as giving someone instructions or guidance or being a response to some question, but it's a completely different thing seeing what the artists come up with and what their expression is, where like each time it's a learning experience for me, in like at a psychological, like a mental level, but also like right at the heart, because you get both of them. So I really liked your altar, and it was one of the ones where, like, all of them, I see them, I go, I'm curious as to what the things on that altar mean, because there's not a reference point for it. And so to hear it articulated and explained, it's just wonderful. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think I really appreciated some of the bigger meanings and the symbols of, and just like those points of contradiction when it came to the symbols that you would have potentially had to have used, and how you chose to include that in an altar, which can be very traditional, and depending on which culture you come from, and separate of just appropriation, but really just the level of potential disrespect. Let's just say, I like to bring up my mother, is like, if she saw me create an altar this way, she'd be like, what are you doing? We're not supposed to do it this way. And the point that we also talked a little bit about yesterday was that it was a way for us in our generation to actually show appreciation and to pull from those, just, maintaining the spirit and the intention of why these rituals existed, right? Or really kind of what you had said, that, culture is not static, it evolves. And maybe even so of the origins of why a ritual may have really started, whether it was to address death and, something a little bit more religious, or whatever it was, the needs of who we are as people has also changed. So some of these have to kind of evolve a little bit. And, where do we find ourselves? Do we compromise this? And it's a really good practice for us as we grow and begin to, sadly, let go of some of the really loved ones in our lives. And how do we choose to remember it? And do we do it in a way that we used to practice with our parents, right? And what orders. So no, like I said, I just really appreciated all of that. I think I might have lost my original question just thinking and talking about it. So let's see if we have some questions. You shared so many last week. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, lots of love. I do have a question. If you were actually, you know what would your parents or elders have said if you saw an altar this way, considering that you did have a lot of you made a lot of points about things that you disagreed with, or roots of it that you found problematic? What would the response have been?
I think both of my parents would love it. My mom is watching with my sister, so they can talk in the chat if she wants to give any feedback. But I would, my parents, so my mom was baptized as Mormon in Fiji, so she could go to the good school. My dad went to Muslim school as a young person. And so I feel like my family was always like Hindu agnostic. Like, it was more about practicing something that was true to you, but practicing something. Like, I think they would be more concerned if I was atheist, or if I just had no beliefs in like connection. And even like being atheist, I feel like they'd be okay with that, to be honest. As long as I still believed in human connection and felt a sense of responsibility to others. I think they would love this. I think that, yes, Amanda just called, my partner is also in the chat, and we call my mom a Mormon because she was Mormon, but not like really Mormon, like Mormon for, you know, the opportunity it provided, but also is Hindu. And in our home, you'll see pictures of Jesus Christ next to pictures of Krishna and Lakshmi, because it's not really about them specifically. It's more about how you enact these things in your everyday life and how you enact those principles in your relationships, right? And I believe this to be true when we think about our social justice practices and our practices towards equity. Like, not only do we need to talk about these larger institutions of oppression, but also how do we treat one another? You know, how do we hurt each other when we're having a bad day, or how are we held responsible in like relationship to one another?
Mormdu, I know a lot of Cambodian Mormdist Buddhists. We've always, I actually went to a Mormon church growing up because they would speak the language. I mean, they took the time to have their missionaries speak the language. So of course, Cambodian refugees and immigrants here would just gather there because of the sense of community, right? And I think that was the root of a lot of these practices and religions, and why why they were created. It is a need of connecting and surviving, right? So, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Barry, do you have any last words?
Just thank you so much for this opportunity. It was very challenging in kind of making me think about how I could be honest about my beliefs and what I wanted to create, while also, like, you know, wanting to create something that was worthy of people's time and energy, but also was simple, because my spiritual practice is fairly simplistic. But thank you, everyone, for all the love.
No, thank you for sharing it with us. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, one thing that we also put out there was that the creation of the altars it's the process that is also part of the altars. It's very much, rather than just the end results, the process in itself can be an emotional journey. And, you know, for you all to share it with us this way is really important, and we appreciate it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. The process was definitely, I think, more meaningful in some ways than the actual end product, because it made me think about the trajectory and reflect in a way that I haven't had to, and probably wouldn't have to if I didn't have this project in front of me. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I just want to add on to that. I like I said, I really enjoyed your discussion where you articulated everything. And that's actually, as I think about each one of these days, hearing the intentionality of each artist and like what each part meant to them and why it's there has been just as impactful, if not more impactful than the end product, because you can understand the meaning. And this speaks to, I think it gives people a lot of confidence and comfort in the capacity to make their own, where like it doesn't necessarily have to look a particular way, but if you have intentionality with each thing that you put there, then, you know, you can make something that's meaningful. And I'll say, over the last couple of days, I've gotten emails and photos from people saying that they've been inspired to make altars after listening to the artists and seeing what they did. And it's, you know, there's like humility about it, where it's like, this is what I made, you know, it's not I'm not an artist, but like I did something, and it's like that's just as good as anything. And so anyways, I you know, this just adds to the tapestry of how we can share all of this together and inspire people to do similar altars, and with the intention. And yours had a lot of intentionality in like each piece, and so I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, if we had time, we would, you know, once we get all our feelings out, I would have loved to tap into all the other stuff. It's a loaded one. They've all been extremely amazing. Really excited to kind of roll into our next part. I actually met Dr. Darrien Jamar Drummond when he was living next door to the shop. And we used to just have some really insightful conversations about just life and being a parent, and really most at the root of it all was about being really present. And then, after a while, I found out he was actually an amazing Reiki master and a life coach, among also being an amazing chiropractor, by the way. He's really reset my husband and I in ways that I can breathe better. Just that makes a huge difference during allergy season. But hopefully, what we were hoping to do was to kind of allow everybody to take the time to be present, and he's going to lead us in a really present spiritual moment. And by it's not a religious thing. I'll let him really talk a little bit about it. But yeah, I don't know if you want to kind of roll into it. Dr. D, you ready?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Cool. Well, first off, thank you, Seda, for inviting me into this space and on this platform. When you had sent the information over, well, first off, you asked me to do something. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. But beyond even, reading into it. Yeah, right. I'm like, wait, I should have definitely checked first. But when you sent the information over, I understood the idea of altars, and a camera's not on mine, but I have a display, and I realized now I've started creating altar about 6 years ago when I started chiropractic school. But I consider myself a student first and a teacher second. And so joining into this space, the perspective and understanding of what an altar can be, and paying homage to, our ancestors, and that component, especially coming from the community where the community I grew up in, not really processing or dealing with death in an efficient way. It has really helped me in a lot of ways, and I've been inspired. So thank you. And on that note, something I've been really sitting with before joining the experience, and that has come up over and over again, and Barrett just said it, is the idea of intentionality. And I think about the intention of this festival starting at the start of a full moon. Full moons just being an opportunity to really release, to let go. And then the last day, today being the day before the election. And so I just think like, wow, like me being a part of this, it's really been speaking to me. And then I was just trying to think about what else did I want to share in terms of my own story as it relates to healing. And I didn't really know until like 5 minutes ago when Barrett had mentioned that he's from Marietta, Georgia. And I was like, yeah, life, and that's when my decision to go to chiropractic school was what really triggered my healing journey. I call it the start of my spiritual journey. After I graduated undergrad, I was just in a place of just being, deeply wounded in a lot of ways, on the emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, and all the ways. And so I was looking for some type of healing. And I knew I couldn't find that in the conventional way. I knew it wasn't just going to an MD and getting prescribed this or that, or necessarily being labeled with depression or anxiety. I knew it was something much deeper. And so when I opened myself up to, being guided, what came to me was chiropractic. I was literally sitting on my grandmother's couch in her den after working a full shift at a restaurant, paying back money from undergrad. I was 3 months behind on my rent, and so I was paying back those overdue bills. And that came up, and so I'm like, okay, what is chiropractic? I've never been to a chiropractor before, so I started Googling it, and I started to learn about the body having this innate wisdom, the body being able to heal itself. It just needs the appropriate environment, the appropriate circumstances. And I'm like, wow, this is something I've always believed in. I've never been able to articulate it. I never knew there was an exact profession that did this. And then the last thing was that I always wanted to live in Atlanta, Georgia. I can't tell you why, because I've never been to Atlanta. I danced in undergrad And in the pamphlet, it said, for all the seniors, it said at the end, Darrien plans to move to Atlanta, Georgia. At the time, I thought for event planning because that was my major. And so I said, wow, I wonder if there's a school in Georgia. Google, Google, Google. Lo and behold, Life University in Marietta, Georgia. And so I packed up my 2-door Acura coupe and drove 10 hours to Marietta, Georgia. Again, never met a chiropractor, never been adjusted, but it was that questioning, that intention of asking, and then being receptive to it. And not necessarily, not going to say that it was easy to listen, because there was a lot of resistance. There was, explaining to other people how I decided to go this route when I never even mentioned it before. And so that was 2014. And here I am today, 2020, just growing my practice of healing, meeting and connecting with people, and just like Seda said, just learning to really be present. And so it's with great honor that I am able to offer you all this meditative healing practice and moment. And so I just want to share a little bit about Reiki. I don't know if you all have experienced Reiki before. If you have, I would like to know so in the chat, just to get a good sense of who has had Reiki, or even if you, oh yeah, Seda has had Reiki before, and maybe even what understanding you have. But I just want to share a few definitions. Reiki can be explained in 3 ways: as a word, as an energy, and as a holistic healing system. Reiki is a safe, gentle, non-intrusive healing technique for use on oneself. I use it almost every day on myself, other people, or on animals. I also use it on my bunny. You may hear her jumping around in the room. I have a bunny. But it's much more than a physical therapy. It is a holistic system for balancing, healing, and harmonizing body, mind, and emotions, and spirit, promoting relaxation, a sense of wholeness and well-being, and encouraging self-awareness, personal growth, and spiritual development. And so before we join, I'm just going to cue a few things. First, I ask that you find yourself in a comfortable, either seated, if that's what you feel called to, or maybe if you have the space, you can also lie down. Some people find it more comfortable lying down. I'm just going to give you a moment to do so. And then the other is, if you've had Reiki or not, just open yourself up to experiencing, open yourself up to witnessing. A lot of times we step into moments or into opportunities with these preconceived notions of what we're going to experience, what's going to come up, what we should say, what we shouldn't say. And that robs us of being completely present. And so just give yourself the gift of just being able to bear witness to this moment. And I think in that way, you just open yourself up into receiving healing in whatever way that you may need it today in this moment, in your life and in our history. Seda, can you kind of hear the music? Okay, beautiful. All right, so I'm actually, in a moment you may see my screen turn off. I'm still here, but I may be doing some weird stuff that you all may not understand, so I'd rather not have to explain it. But go ahead and allow your eyes to gently close. With your eyes gently closed, allow your breath to deepen to the point of your awareness. Allow it to deepen just enough that you notice that you're actually breathing. The breath is one of our greatest resources for bringing us back to the moment. Allow your breath to return to a relaxed rhythm. And now we're going to begin to shine a light on our thoughts, on the state of our mind. I just want you to notice, to observe your thoughts. Observe what's coming up for you, what's showing up in this moment. And we're doing so in a non-judgmental way. Just noticing. Now we're going to shine a light on our bodies. Notice what's going on within your body. Maybe you're noticing tension around your shoulders and your neck. Maybe it's in your heart space. Maybe you're super clear today, and so you're noticing the sensation of sitting or laying. Just observe, notice. And lastly, before moving into the Reiki portion, I want to offer this moment for you to invite whatever spirits, whatever ancestors, whatever guides that you need to support you in this moment. Or maybe what you need to invite is hope, or faith, or love, or understanding. Whatever it is that you need to feel supported within your spirit, be open to asking and receiving. Allow your awareness to land at the very base of your spine. This area of your spine, located around your tailbone, is known as your root chakra. This chakra is known as our center for stability, groundedness, safety, and security. It's our I am center. Imagine the beautiful color red moving and glowing in this area, feeling the roots or the base area of your spine with the beautiful color red. Take what you need for healing today. And now, bring your awareness to the area just below your belly button. This is known as your sacral chakra. Your sacral chakra is known as your center for creativity, spirituality, sexuality, sensuality. It's associated with the color orange. Imagine the beautiful color orange moving into this area of your sacral chakra, just below your belly button. Allow this area to fill with the color orange. Take what you need for healing today. Allow your awareness to grow just above your belly button. This area above your belly button and below your breastbone is known as your solar plexus. Your solar plexus is known as your center for personal power. This area is what moves us forward in life with confidence, trusting our own empowered abilities. This area is associated with the color yellow. Allow the color yellow to fill this area between your breastbone and above your belly button. Be open and receptive to healing. Take what you need for healing today. Next, bring your awareness to the area of your heart space. This is known as your heart chakra. The heart chakra is our center, is the center of our emotions. It's our I love center. The heart chakra is known as one of the most powerful, or the most powerful chakra of all. It's associated with the color green. Imagine a beautiful, healing color green moving and filling the area of your heart chakra. Feel the radiance of this color. Feel the healing power of love. Take what you need for healing today. Allow your awareness to drift in the area of your throat. This area is known as our throat chakra. It's our I speak center, associated with the color blue. This center gives us our power, our ability to speak our truth, to remain confident in our beliefs, in our communication style to others. Allow the color blue to fill this space of your throat. Be receptive. Take what you need today for healing. Drift your awareness to the area and space between your eyebrows. This area between our eyebrows is our third eye chakra. The third eye center is our center for intuition, our ability to see and to know. A place where we are guided by our instincts. Imagine the color purple moving and feeling this area between your eyebrows, restoring your intuition, restoring your perceptive ability. Take what you need for healing today. And finally, allow your awareness It lands at the very top of your head. This area of your body, the very top of your head, is known as your crown chakra. Your crown chakra connects us to all others, to those who have passed, those who are still living today. It connects us to the divine, to the spirit above. It's associated with the color white. Imagine the pure white color beginning to radiate from the very crown of your head. As it begins to radiate, imagine that it begins to fill your room space. It begins to expand into your apartment or office space. Imagine that it moves beyond, out into the world. Allow this color, white, to heal, to restore, to connect you to guidance, to higher guidance. Take what you need for healing today. Before opening your eyes, before moving out of this moment and into the next, take a moment to simply notice. To notice the state of your mind, the state, the feeling of your body. Maybe even sense how you feel beyond yourself, how you may or may not feel an additional level of support, connectivity. Maybe if there was something beautiful that came up during this experience that you would like to place it somewhere. Maybe for you, that area is the place of your heart. And so if there is something that you want to store there before moving out of this moment, before going back into the world today and tomorrow with the election, place it there in your heart as a light, and know that at any moment you can return there by closing your eyes, by breathing, and giving it permission to shine. Thank you. Namaste. It's much darker.
That was so peaceful. So I have this here. Thank you. Well, I
You're
will
certainly
say,
welcome.
my son came down and interrupted me in the middle. Thank you. I feel like it was such a good way to prepare for tomorrow, and a great peaceful moment of like sort of like a meditative space too for the last 3 days. So thank you for leading us through that.
You're welcome. Thank you again for asking me.
And I'm sure Barrett will have something to say too. And it just kind of, not that I was thinking the whole time, I really just made sure that I was present as possible. So I appreciated that. Was the vulnerability that was such an important part of what you just led us through. And the vulnerability of taking the space and as a person of color, or in which we need the healing that is so rooted, I think, that isn't just going to the doctor when you're sick, kind of like you said, seeking that out was just some of the feelings that I just kind of was thinking about, just that vulnerability and taking, feeling empowered to, of that state of vulnerability.
Yeah, I agree. I think I guess one thing that's really interesting is I think there's a growing community of within the African American community of alternative healing methods that's growing as we get more and more information about how America's traditional medical practices, disproportionately harm us. And so there's like a greater necessity for these practices to become more commonplace within our community, because we know the structures that are supposed to help us don't help us that well. But then even if you remove that, there's benefits to doing Reiki and all sorts of other practices. And I, just the other day, my partner told me that maybe I needed to like balance my chakras because I seemed out of whack in some stuff. I have like it's actually just quite funny. That was just a conversation the other day. So no, it was, thanks for sharing, and we really appreciated it. It's, we definitely need to have a capacity to calm ourselves as the next days are approaching, as tomorrow approaches. Yeah. First thing this morning, I got a series of text messages from friends who are very anxious about tomorrow and wanted to have conversations, and that doesn't really make you less anxious.
Yeah. I mean, it depends, right? I think like if we're talking through it in a way where we're taking control of those feelings, and also letting ourselves be afraid. Like I feel like sometimes the anxiety is just a blanket feeling for fear, anger, or whatever it is. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's what it is. And I think like if we allow ourselves to go through that, that in itself, I think, can be part of that process of feeling like, all right, I got it out of my system. Now I'm ready to take it on. I feel empowered. I feel like I've got this. And I think at the end of the day, like, hopefully we will be okay, right?
Yeah. Well, the conversations regarding this election, and most elections, but especially this one, is really people trying to feel as though they have control over something that they don't have really any control over. I have a political science degree. I've been looking at politics for years and years, so I might be able to provide better analysis than somebody else who hasn't read as much as I have about it. But that doesn't mean that I'm in control of what an outcome will be. And so, it's one of those things where you have informative conversations, but what people are really looking for, the conversations aren't going to have, because I can't, no one can answer it. You just have to wait. And so having some sort of practice to send to yourself and help you out. I think is quite beneficial. With that,
I wanted to just share some interesting research. I also got my master's in positive psychology from Life University. And during that experience, just, read so many great things. But one of the research studies that I always carry with me is this study that shows that we often overestimate how much something will make us happy. It's like, oh, if I move here, then all of the anxieties I have will be gone. Or if I get this car, it's going to bring me this much. Or if I get this job, we often, again, we overestimate, but we also underestimate our ability to survive certain situations. And so I think part of it too is like, if this outcome happens with the election, I feel like I need to move here, or I feel like I need to move there. And so hopefully, those who were in this experience and those beyond us that we may go out into the world with, we can empower them to know that, we're going to survive no matter what. Like, we have it within us. We have the tools and resources and the guidance from above. So thank you all again for allowing me to be here. I have to jump to another meeting, but it was lovely.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I feel so quiet. Like, I feel like that's just where my body wants to be right now.
Have a cup of tea after if you can. Just have another moment.
Mansa, let me flag you down here. Like what you were saying as I try to find Mansa here, for his portion of the talk is what you were saying about the medical system, here to harm. And I don't talk about it too much, but like that's kind of the reason why I chose to do a home birth. Not because I'm not part of this maternal mortality rate, but it really just doing that alone just started to see a lot of the mistreatment of and just sort of the lack of intention in the medical system, and especially when it comes to just something where it was a cycle of birth and life, and in which you're not necessarily really a patient there. You're there to hold a space for bringing life, right? Unless you are a patient, unless there is something else. And it just made me really think a lot about that, and a lot of alternative options that we really lack, or that we really offer in this country. So
yeah, 100%. Like, I have plenty of friends who have made similar decisions. But yeah, let's kick it to Mansa. You ready?
Yeah. There he is. I see him. There he goes. Asking to unmute.
Hey,
Sir, how's it going? Thank you for joining us tonight.
of course. Thank y'all for having me.
Ooh, I feel like you have this like portrait filter or something going on in the background. It looks really nice.
Hey, it's my my actual camera that I shoot with. So
Wow, it's so fancy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna I really you did something a little bit different for your altars, right? And I think it's reflective of your style and your art and the medium of art that you choose, which was a video format. So for everybody that's tuned in, I'm gonna go ahead and play it. And I get anxiety about sharing my screen. I'm always scared about doing it wrong. Everybody send me some luck. Let me make sure I have it pulled up, guys. All right. I'm gonna pull it up and share this, and after that, we're gonna kind of get into it and hear a little bit about your piece to it.
okay.
Okay.
am Denise Johnson, and I am the mother of 6 wonderful sons, and one of whom is Quasi. Quasi smiled every single day and found something to laugh about. I mean, and laugh heartily about every single day.
The 3 words that could best describe Quasi is, I would say, strength, positivity, and swag.
He's super cool. He's handsome. He got great cool style.
Man, he's like probably one of the coolest brothers, and not the coolest brother out of everybody. Like he like the flyest one, like always been the smartest one. I used to go to him like on one-on-one, just talking to him, being there for his wife emotionally, mentally, physically, like anything. Like he was just like one of the best people in this world, like basically an angel on earth.
Quasi, when he was home alone at grandma's house, and I was just about to get off of school, he always used to be at the door all the time, just looking outside, waiting for me.
One thing that I noticed like about Qua, like at a young age, was like the way he carried himself, the way he always handled his stuff. He ain't like really never complained. He always took care of everything he had to take care of. Never really like asked nobody for nothing. He was always like stand up solid guy. Definitely got the girls.
Quasi had phenomenal strength. He was able to almost compartmentalize. He was going through a lot of things, and I never seen him have anything less than a smile on his face.
If I were to kind of say a couple of words about his character or who he was, it would be wisdom. He had a quiet wisdom about him that I don't think I really became completely aware of it until I watched him go through his physical, his illness and the physical limitations that he suffered as a result of it. And I really started to see and understand that he had a wisdom that was well beyond men twice or 3 times his age.
He definitely had strength. He was the strongest. I knew he never complained. He always was, walking with that upbeat, like walking like Iron Man or something. He had strength even in his walk and in his voice. Everything he did it with power and strength.
He kept me going. How could I be down when he was so full of joy all the time? So that's what my son taught me. And I think that's what keeps me going, despite my missing him terribly. It just keeps me going and keeps me persevering, keeps me finding reasons to live and to give back.
And what's one thing your daddy taught you?
How to be brave, how to be strong, how to think.
The main thing I learned from him, like personally, is like bravery and courage. I know my brother Quasi got a lot of that from my father because he instilled like positivity, and no matter like what negative situation that you in, my dad would go through the world to be against him, and he'd still smile at you. He'd still laugh at you, and he'd be going through the worst pain and you wouldn't know. So my dad, he's like the best father in the world. Like I learned about being brave. It's always great to be smart, intellectual black man, and always just whatever you love, just do it at 110%. Like my dad, he always been there for us.
I always thought my dad was Superman, the black Superman. That's how I look at him. Tough, intelligent, and fun.
My father always told me don't complain because it's somebody that's doing a lot harder, but I seen him go through some tough things, and I never seen him be a victim, or I never seen him focus too much on the negative things. He always took something positive from everything he went through. He always kept me motivated.
He was just real intelligent, smart, just brilliant. It was like you could ask him anything in the world and he would have an answer to it, from like advice on girls, advice on life, advice on homework.
One thing I definitely learned about him is like at a young age, he like was real heavy on like school. I learned like so much like street smarts and like book smarts. So like I'm like I rarely get into trouble. I stay out the way, and like my father was like that in basketball. He had the Michael Jordan fade and he had a ball, so you know he was tough. He was tough.
He was real fun, always was smiling, always laughing, always wanted to go somewhere fun and do things, go to the movies, go out to eat, go out of town, travel, be everywhere where all the excitement was at. That was where my dad wanted to be.
I love Papa, I love Kwaji. They were strong, and I miss them.
To this day, I just wish I could be as strong as both of them, and I strive to be as strong as both of them.
They like angels to me. Like they still with me in spirit, and like we like a real close-knit family. Like I get to talk to them whenever I want to, you know, and it's even though they gone, it don't feel like they not gone because I know they here, you know what I mean? They like show me they love like in the spiritual world too.
Yeah, so that was my version of Alt Tours that was dedicated to my twin brother and my dad. My twin brother transitioned in 2019 and my dad transitioned in 2017. And they was both like they both basically is like the reason for like everything good about me. I feel like I could trace back to them or my mom or my brothers. Like my family is just like that's like the biggest treasure in my life. Like no amount of money or anything can ever like amount to like how important my family is. And I just feel like Quasi and my dad was like the essence of that. And so like just through this video, I hope everyone was like able to kind of like just feel kind of like how we feel about my dad and about my twin brother. Like the whole reason why I picked video and got into video in the first place was because of my twin brother. We both went to Morgan State, and just randomly like I was gonna follow him. He was I really looked at him as my older brother, even though he only older than me by 33 minutes. But it was just like he always knew exactly what to say to me, always knew how to guide me, and like some of my best decisions, he always was like behind that and guide me. But with video, he randomly was just like when we went to Morgan, we was there at orientation. I was going to copy him and be a business major, and he was just like, "Bro, you should shoot videos." Like I don't know what made him say it or anything like that, and I was just like, "All right," and just went right to the computer and changed my major. And now that's like my passion, and like anytime I'm on set or shooting a video or anything, like that's when I feel my fullest. And so it's just like I really feel like my twin brother like knew me better than I knew myself and like always had. And so it's like now that he transitioned, I just feel like he's like in the spiritual realm and he's somebody that I could always pray to and just be connected to always. Like a lot of times we always was raised, of course, well, my family was raised to always believe in God, and we're like Christian but non-denomination, so we always believed in God. But it's just like having family members that you had in the physical that transition, I think it just like helps to strengthen your faith, because it's like every time I pray to them, I always receive an answer like right away. It's been times where like I'll be like sad or down or anything like that, and just like really feel like losing them is getting the best of me. And then like out of nowhere, like I'll end up running into like one of Quasi's co-workers or something, and they'll have like a little short story or something, just be like, "Yeah, your brother was always helping me, always bringing me up, lifting my vibes up and stuff." And I think that's just be like signs from Quasi just to keep me going. So like I don't know, like that's all I do every day now, man. I wake up, I pray to my dad, I pray to Quasi, I pray to God, of course. I thank God always for Quasi and for my dad because, like I said, like Quasi always guided me to some of my best decisions. So I really feel like God had just chose to like bless me with my guardian angel, just in the physical. And now that he transitioned, it's just like I know he's still here to be that spiritual person to just keep guiding me in every way. And like from the video, you could see like my like dad and Quasi, both of them, they always had ways to like keep your vibes up. Like it was never times. Both of them went through things that, like personally, if I went through it, like I don't know if I would have made it through it. Like my brother, he suffered from a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and he kind of battled with it for 3 years before he transitioned. And my dad had he had cancer, and he battled with his cancer for a while, and then he had ended up incarcerated like right before he passed away. And when he was incarcerated, like for whatever reason while he was incarcerated, the doctors just at the jail didn't like decided not to give him his medicine. So for like 4 or 5 months he went without getting his medicine, and then he ended up getting out on a like emergency medical release, and he was only able to stay out for probably like I think like within like 3 months he ended up transitioning. So it's just like losing, I think losing family members to things where you just feel like it wasn't from like a natural progression of like old age or something like that. It like fills you with a lot of like anger and just makes you want to like unleash it in ways that I don't know. It's just it fills you with a lot of anger and pain and hurt. But like my twin brother and dad, like they always taught me just to always keep a positive perspective no matter what you're going through, and use like the situations you going through to like better somebody else. And so my dad was a Black Panther. He always taught us to be aware of our community. So that's something that I try to do now. And then my twin brother, he always had like this idea to start a clothing line called Beginning of All Unity. But he was gonna like make it be an acronym to just say BO. And it's like those two things, like now that they transition and we're in this time period where it's just like we have a pandemic and racism and everything we're fighting right now. I think like it's just like both of their like passions, like with my dad being a Black Panther and with Quasi wanting to start this clothing line called Beginning of All Unity. I just feel like they put it on us to like keep that legacy going and to like keep pushing it through, and like they're there to guide us in the spirit, and we're here to like just keep pushing it in the physical. So like I hope that video just allow all y'all to kind of take a little bit of essence of like what my dad was, who my dad was and is, and who my twin brother dad and it, who my twin brother is. So I appreciate y'all for giving me this space for sure.
It wasn't even just getting to know your father and your brother, but I felt like I got to know you more.
Appreciate it, yeah. Yeah, like yeah, they, like I said, they are the like I think like they're my backbone. Like they taught me a lot about life, and of course my mom. Like my mom is the one who started the video. Like in that video, it's like my mom, my older brothers all together is six of us. I got two little brothers and then everybody else older than me. And then it was my nephew and of course Quasi's daughter. She was the one talking about how Quasi taught her how to fight and everything. But it was just like my family like is who made me. So I'm glad you was able to get that.
Yeah, no, just to echo what Seda said, I remember the first time I did like a Day of the Dead at my house, and the conversations you end up having with your friends where you haven't had those conversations before, because that's not like a conversation that you have at lunch or walking down the street, you know, like it's just not, they don't come up that often. So it provides a really a great opportunity to get to know the people you already know like a little better, and get to know the stuff that motivates them, that guides them, that you don't, you just wouldn't have that awareness. And so I really appreciated your video. It was, you know, it each artist has brought something completely different with their altars, and they've told different stories and showed different facets of how like creating this space can be really beneficial. And so you know,
For sure. Everybody who has participated, so grateful for allowing us to be part of the journey and sharing something so intimate and something so personal, something so just some even political. And it's been such a teaching moment, insightful moment. And I hope everybody also feels like the altars, whether you choose something more traditional, or you choose that the festival here has shown you that it's purely an expression in a sense. So, you know, the point was of what we did was to just show just the range that you could really bring through the form and an expression of altars. And again, it could be completely beyond that. If something that you have heard or have felt really inspired by in the last 3 days makes you want to do something else, right? Whether it's to get out and vote, plug, or to learn a little bit more about your ancestry, or to find out a little bit of the piece of the history that you know, piques your interest in one of the symbolisms in somebody's altars. You know, that was then we feel like hopefully you've taken a piece of the last 3 days, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm still processing all of the.
Me too. This one was a deep one.
deep.
This last 3 days was a deep one, and I feel really good about that. And what we kind of were saying, actually, even beginning before we started the event for today, was that it's been really raw in the last 3 days. There's been some really intellectual conversations. But most importantly, we were also just allowing ourselves to be emotional and personal, and seeing the friendship and the connection, and that, and bringing sort of like the actual human aspect of who we are, which I think is really important at the end of the day. Whatever we decide to do moving forward in our lives, you know, taking time to just survive through this pandemic and the political unrest, and just sit with ourselves a little bit and give ourselves that moment.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really, you know, significant is, like, we created the space and we put it on the calendar. And one of the big parts of, like, in an intellectual way for me is, at least in the African American community and in a lot of communities, altars would happen and me frequently after something tragic happened. And so, like, the space was being created after something tragic happened. But now we're showing that you can create that space proactively and do it, you know, regardless of something tragic happening. You can make it something that's really empowering, has been, you know, the word that we've been discussing a lot today. And so, like, when I see a lot of the altars that everyone's made, I start thinking, I wonder what their altar will look like next year. I was like, I wonder if Mansa will do a video next year, or if all the people in his video will make an altar, and that'll be a thing. It's one of those fascinating things to start being able to start thinking about. What will this look like in the future? Because, like, we're creating the space, and, you know, I've said this a bunch, but when I was kind of, you know, and Sadie can attest to this, when I came up with the idea of trying to make it cross-cultural a couple years ago, it was really hard to conceptualize for a lot of people how this would look and how could we do it without appropriating culture and appreciating culture. And it's just really nice that over these 3 days, I think we've shown that, like, that's something that's really tangible to do. And now it's like, it's official, you know, this is on the calendar. This is a thing that we do. It's real. It's not just in my head. And I really appreciate all of the artists for contributing and showing their perspectives to make it, like, real in a very, you know, in a way that, you know, I could have done by myself. And so I really just appreciate everyone that was here in SAMASAMA for, you know, getting all the artists and bring them together, and you guys sharing your work. It's been really, really impactful.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that we've been writing a lot and talking, or was just sort of those key points about this festivals was the traditions, the resilience, and the community. And I think that we've accomplished that, right, in a sense. And most importantly, it's not even just about celebrating past life, but it's made us appreciate our present life. Made it's so. Thank you. But thank you, everybody. If this has been your third day or your first day, it's just so special for us to know that you cared enough to be here. But we won't ramble on too much. Just your normal housekeeping stuff. Follow along with us, right? There's SAMASAMA. There's the Sustainable Culture Lab. And we're going to follow up with everybody. Since you've registered for the Eventbrite link, you'll get all the information from all the speakers past from Saturday, Sunday to today. So that way you can continue following the work of all the artists and from both of our organizations, and see what we come up with next. But we hope that really we're not trying to tell you what to do from out of here, but hopefully just plant something inside of you to kind of take away and think about.
Yeah, and just to close out, one last thing to add is I think it's really impactful that this space we're creating is right before our national election, and it's going to fall at this time every single year. So, you know, as we make decisions to shape our lives, thinking about the past and the people that have shaped us to influence those decisions, I think makes a lot of sense. So please, if you haven't voted yet, go out and vote. And if you're looking for wisdom in those decisions, think about the people who preceded you and the wisdom that they've passed on to you.
Yes, thank you to everybody on both of our teams too that helped make this happen. And Les, you create such a great ambiance with the music. So she's going to close us out with that, and hopefully we'll take another moment to just create our own moment of remembrance. So thank you all.
Stay with us for a few minutes. Thank you, Shyama. Thank you, Mansa. Thank you, Sheldon, for sharing. Thank you, Barrett and Seda. Good night, everyone. Keep safe tomorrow.